Sairam America. Welcome to this week's episode of InSaider Lens. I'm Harikan Jeevaram, the male YA advisor for the USA, and I'm going to be your news anchor tonight. As you know, these episodes of InSaider Lens have been led by our incredible young adults across the country who've been spending countless hours putting them together, including being news anchors for the series. Honestly, I've been eyeing this seat for the past 5 weeks. So myself and Sister Lakshmi Pochincharla, our national female YA advisor, decided to give our young adults a much needed break to take care of their personal needs as they continue to focus on their spiritual quests. Excuse me. Oh, hello. Sairam, Sister Lakshmi. I'm live on national TV.
I see a green screen behind you. We are supposed to be in a newsroom setting, right?
Oh, geez. I mean, Sairam, I thought I had all this figured out. I guess not. Oh, well, let's just do it the old-fashioned way. Pardon the interruption. Let's try this again. Sairam America. Welcome to this week's episode of the InSaider Lens. I'm Harikan Jeevaram, the US YA male advisor, and I'm going to be your news anchor tonight. Let us get to our top stories for the night. This week, Tuesday, November 23rd, the entire world celebrated our dearest Swami's 96th birthday with joyful bliss, including beautiful birthday programs that included bhajans, reflections, and various service projects. As we came together to celebrate this auspicious day in our own way, we wanted to compile a montage of videos, pictures, screenshots of Swami's 96th birthday celebration for an upcoming InSaider Lens episode. So we request you to please share any media, a photo, or a short video to show us how you celebrated this special day at your center, physically or virtually. This can also be a personal sadhana or seva you offered to mark this holy day. Thank you for your participation. Here is one such wonderful offering by the Detroit Metro Science Center for Swami's 96th birthday. A collage of 96 unique pictures of Swami, each picture contributed by one family, all put together on a beautiful silhouette of Swami. What a dedicated effort. Yesterday, November 24th, Thanksgiving was celebrated across the US, and today we'll focus on the significance of this holiday and reflecting our loving gratitude to Swami, to nature, and all those who have helped us to be where we are today. Thanksgiving is a national holiday celebrated in our country, and it began as a day of giving thanks and sacrifice for the blessings of the harvest and of the preceding year. President John F. Kennedy issued a proclamation on November 5th, 1963, in which he stated, "Our forefathers gave reverent thanks for their safety, for the health of their children, for the fertility of their fields, for the love which bound them together, and for the faith which united them with their God." Today, we have 4 wonderful speakers who will enlighten us with their reflections of the glory of gratitude, seeing the light within and in everything around us. Ms. Doris Hampton. Doris first visited Prasanthanilayam in 1983 and stayed for 9 months. She served at the Institute of SSSIO-USA as faculty member and coordinator, and now is serving as a member of the International Education Committee of the SSSIO since 2000. Over 30 years, Doris has trained and implemented SSEHV, community and school programs, Her most notable passion has been serving the community through various EHV programs. She's been recognized for development of outstanding community service program by former US President Bill Clinton. Doris headed up the project for the Global Compendium of SSEHV programs, which was presented to Bhagavan Satya Sai Baba the morning of his birthday in 2018. Miss Crystal Harris is our second panelist. Crystal has been dedicated member of the Psi organization since the 1980s. She has had the blessing of traveling to India 8 times, experiencing the bliss of being granted 9 interviews from our beloved Swami. Crystal was privileged to be able to spend an entire year at Swami's feet from October 1995 through December 1996, where she listened to many discourses and witnessed many extraordinary things. Next is Mr. Bernie Michael. Born into a Roman Catholic family in 1946 in Akron, Ohio, he was the second of 8 children and received all of his formal education in Catholic schools, including high school and college seminary. He spent a dozen years working in a local music and jewelry store before transitioning to construction materials and moving to Hartford, Connecticut, where he has lived for the past 35 years. Bernie was introduced to Swami and the Psi organization when his wife wrote to the Psi bookstore in Tustin and was connected with their local centers. They have been active in the organization for the last 25 years, including 11 trips to Prasanthi Nilayam. Finally, Mr. Jeremy Hoffer. Jeremy learned about Satya Sai Baba in the late 80s and has had many opportunities to see Swami in India. Highlights include attending the summer course in 1995, the World Youth Conferences, and living in Hyderabad to study Telugu. Jeremy has been a Sai Center president and a regional youth advisor and has participated in the development of service projects in communities across America. Here they are. Sai Ram.
I think a good way to start would be to for us to each go around and talk about where we came from in terms of our family and our own background and how that affected us. So, who would like to start?
Doris.
Crystal, can you jump in?
Okay, I'll start. My family migrated from the South, from Arkansas, when I was 4 years old and moved to a little town in Michigan. Still don't quite understand why they did that, because they lived on farms, huge farms, and very self-sufficient and so forth, but they decided to move to Michigan. And very traditional Christian family. And in fact, the photograph that's on the screen is of an Easter holiday, and we celebrated all the holidays, but there was special emphasis on Christmas, Easter, and Thanksgiving. And with Thanksgiving, we at that point didn't fully understand the significance of the holiday, but we saw it as a gathering time for family, a joyous gathering of family to just be together and dine together. And one of the things I remember most is before we would sit, or after we sat down to eat, we had a number of prayer warriors in our family. So we're sitting there ready to eat, and the prayers would go from one to the other, but always the prayers of Thanksgiving. And as I mentioned, my family was very devout Christians. And I'll let someone else take over now.
Okay, Jeremy, tell us about your youth.
Well, I was born in Denver, but my parents were from Indianapolis. So when I was young, I moved to Indianapolis and really grew up there, where my both sets of my parents had roots. And Thanksgiving was always a time. My grandfather had had grown up on a farm in northern Indiana. So Thanksgiving was always an annual retreat to my great grandmother's farm, where I would see, the full family tree. My Not just my uncles and cousins, but my great uncles and second cousins. I knew my great grandmother, and so we would go to that historical family farm, and driving the 3 hours by car that it was in November. It's that midwestern sky of gray, overcast skies, passing through farm fields left and right, and it was my like the Thanksgiving holiday was about family. It was about the physical, literal connection with the greater family, um, and the love of family togetherness for no other reason than that. And it included all varieties of cooking together, games and fun, mischief among young kids, uncles and aunts telling kids what to do, um, and like mundane family functioning, but just really it was about the like the literal love of family connection. That was the holiday.
That's great. Okay, Crystal, what can you tell us about your early life?
Well, it's funny. Doris mentioned the prayers, and Thanksgiving it was a family oriented holiday. Everybody knew when Thanksgiving came that was the time for family to all gather together and and mostly eat. Well, the younger kids was just a big dinner, even though most of it was probably wasted, but except for desserts. And but it was but it was mostly everybody was going to come together and everybody was going to enjoy the family, seeing family members that we hadn't seen in a long time, and enjoying a huge dinner. And Doris reminded me. I had a smile on my face. She reminded me that we had these prayer rituals where everybody could say a prayer, say the prayer that they wanted to pray, and it became long and drawn out, and everybody was was doing their thing, and the children were sitting there going, "Oh, please don't ask Aunt Sadie to pray; she's going to take forever." And we got through it, and we got to the meal. And my mother used to talk about like pilgrims. Now these are my parents, my beautiful parents, and yeah, I'm told that I look like my mother. But my parents used to actually talk about the history of Thanksgiving, the Pilgrims and the Indians, the American Indians, and things like that. And she told a little story. Well, you know where this came from? It came from this, and she would tell this little story about how it all started. And so we all had a great Thanksgiving was wonderful simply because we wherever we had to come from, we all came together and made sure, there were football games, of course, and the usual, card games or whatever, but everybody was together and enjoying the day.
Very good. Well, it
Wonderful.
sounds like we all have a lot in common.
Mhm.
In our family, I was the second of 8 children, and we were all Catholic. And my entire education was the first 8 years were at the hands of the nuns, And the next 9, high school and college, and a year of graduate school, was at the hands of the priest because I was in the seminary. So that was my background. And it was really interesting. But Thanksgiving was less spiritual, less religious, I would say, because it wasn't dedicated to any one saint or anything like that. And that's how the Catholic Church did things. That was their calendar. But it was, there was definitely a prayer that we said, but it was the same prayer that every Catholic said. And it took about 30 seconds, and then it was over, and then it was right into the food. So the interesting thing that I remember, though, was that there was always a dish or two that was made. And then when it was made like the second or third time, then it became a tradition. And you couldn't have Thanksgiving without that, whether it was like creamed onions or the Brussels sprouts or something like that was always added in. But that was a big part of Thanksgiving in our family from the early times, the beginning of it. So, but then what I'd like to discover from all of you, because uh, I think that's the next thing that's going to be the most important in our lives, is how we met Swami and how we came to him. So, Jeremy, why don't you start, since you're the youngest among us? How did you come to Swami?
Uh, I was still a teenager finishing up high school when I first learned about Swami. And I grew up in a Christian family, fairly traditional Christian family. And I didn't know anything about Asia. And through a friend, a teenage friend, we started investigating Asian philosophy generally. And through this kind of mutual inquiry, we met someone who we came to actually meet SSSIO-USA, and maybe even Doris or Crystal remember Esther Milburn from Rural,
Yes.
Indiana.
Yes.
So she was the first person I ever met who had actually, who knew about Swami personally. And so my friends and I, we had these. She gave us some books, and through her, we were able to make a connection. There was a Psi Center in Indianapolis, and joined in that group. And so it was as simple as that. But the transformation that that happened was somewhat bigger. It When I read Swami's words, there was something that just resonated well in my heart. From my immature point of view, I couldn't judge his words exactly all to be, you know what I mean? I didn't even understand everything he said, but what I understood felt like truth to me. And so I carried on in that way, just like learning more, and the intensity of my feelings just got stronger. And so that led up to me going to see him for the first time in the early '90s. And uh, and that's, that is simply put how I came to know about him.
Wow.
That's fantastic.
Oh, beautiful.
Okay. Doris, do you want to go next again?
Okay. I was a mother, wife, um, and reaching a point where I was feeling an emptiness in my life, like a hole in the heart, and ended up being not a wife anymore. But and I remember standing out. I had just gotten out of my car, and I remember looking up at the sky and saying that God is on earth in human form. I want to see him. And of course, we know where those thoughts came from. But with that, it just, things started to happen. It was rather chaotic, but I then saw a picture of Swami, and his presence filled the room. And I knew that he was there, but it didn't, I wasn't unruffled or ruffled by it. It just, I accepted his presence. I could see the color of his robe and the hem of his robe. And there was a huge golden glow in the room. And those kinds of experiences continued. And then I saw a film of him at the Ebel Theater. And they were talking about Satya Sai, education and human values. And then Swami came on the screen, and that was it. I mean, the friend sitting next to me said, "I think you left the room. You just were gone." And I knew that this was God in human form, and there was an energy with that I won't even attempt to describe. And then shortly after, a few weeks after that, no, a few days, I had a dream that Swami was taking me on a golden globe to the mountaintop. And the next day, a ticket came in the mail. So it's very, we don't have time to go into all the details, but I traveled to India via England, spending time there with Sai devotees, and then on to India. But I did attend the World Conference in Rome, the conference, the Sai conference that was held in Rome in 1983. And that's where I met Dr. Harvey, Dr. Hislop, Dr. Goldstein, and the Kanus and I had already met the Kanus in England, but then on to India, to the Lord. And when he stepped out of the Mandir, it's the most beautiful sight I've ever seen in my life, or probably lifetimes. So I won't go any further.
Wow. But you leave us with lots of questions to ask. We'll have to make this into a series. Okay. Crystal, tell us, how did you come to Swami?
Well, I came to Swami. I would consider myself a strange child because I didn't go outside and play like other children. And one day, I was looking out the window and children were playing. And I turned to my mother and I said, I must have been born in the wrong time because I had no connection to running and playing and doing all of that. So I told her, and of course, as most mothers do, she would just say, go away. What are you talking about? Go play. But I had this feeling pretty much all of my life. That happened when I was like 8. The thinking that I was born in the wrong time. That was about 8 years old. And so I joined a choir. I was in a choir, and a friend of mine was sitting next to me, and she was reading a book. And the book was called Sai Baba Avatar. Well, nobody knows that's not a word that's common in English. So I'm looking over her shoulder, and she would turn the page. And of course, I wasn't done with the page that I was reading. So I finally asked her, "What are you reading?" And she said, "Oh, she tried to egg me on." And she said, "Oh, it's a book about the avatar." And I said, "Okay, I'll play along. What is an avatar?" And she said, "It's the full incarnation of God." I'm shortening this story. She said, "It's the full incarnation of God." Well, I belong to a metaphysical church, and we believed in God is everywhere, evenly present in everybody. So I got it. And so I said, "Well, what do you mean full incarnation of God?" And she, eventually said that means God is in a body here on earth in the flesh. Well, that piqued my interest, and asked her for the book, where I could get a book. And she said, I'll bring you one. She brought me a book the next week. I was reading the book and I was getting a little nervous because I kept thinking, oh, you don't have Jesus down pat. You don't even, what are you doing? And I was reading this book and a voice came to me as if a person was standing there and said, there's no need to fear. There's only one. And I thought, well, Crystal, you really are not prone to running off and I'm not talking about people, but you're not, I was saying to myself, you're not prone to running off and shaving your head and, playing a tambourine in the airport. That's not you. So you're not going to go nuts. And so I finished the book. And in part of the book, there was a picture of Swami, and outlining the picture of Swami was and like a picture of Jesus over top of him. It wasn't in the book, but there was a picture of Jesus to let me know I'm okay. I'm moving in the right direction. It's all right. And I went to my first Baba meeting. Now, I saw a video. I was just taken aback, couldn't believe what I was looking at. And when everybody, when you're the only new person in the room, everybody turns to you when the video is over to see what your response is. And the first thing I said was, how can I get there? How do I get there? So the following year was a retreat. And that person in the background of the retreat, the keynote speaker, is Dr. Hisler. And so I was sitting there and I thought, okay, let me just get up on one knee and take this picture of Dr. Hisler. So when I got the pictures back in those days, you went to have your pictures developed, And when I got the picture developed, I grabbed my chest, and the lady behind me thought I was having some kind of physical problem. And she asked me, was I all right? And I said, yes, I'm fine. I'm fine. This picture was in my pictures. It was not in the room. And it's also in the negative, as if it were there. But that orange light was not in the room at that time. And so that was my first real experience with Sai Baba. And I say real experience because before I went to the retreat, I was thinking to myself, is this going to be another one of those things that I'm in the background? I never get acknowledged. Nobody cares, and I had gotten so upset about that feeling. I had wallpaper on the back of my kitchen, and I kept saying, I'll just be one of these little flowers in this wallpaper. I'll be nobody and nothing. And then I went to that's when I went to the retreat and took that picture. And so to me, that was Swami telling me, no, that's not what's going to happen. So don't be afraid. You're not going to get swept away in the background, wondering what's going on. You are my child, just like everybody else is. And I took that picture, and that was, to me, my true first impression or first experience with Sai Baba.
Wow.
Where was that, Crystal?
That was in 1988.
Wow.
Which
And
place were you guys?
I took my first trip in 1990, actually.
What was the location of the picture?
The location, it was in St. Louis. That's where I met Doris.
Oh, okay.
I took the
I
took the picture in St. Louis at my first retreat.
Fantastic.
I remember that in Dr. Hislop
Mm-hmm.
being here. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Was that an old campground that they used to do those retreats?
Yeah.
It was at a sort of a camp for
Mhm.
youth
Mhm.
in the woods, beautiful location,
Mhm.
and the retreats are still held there.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was so mesmerized and excited about the picture that the next retreat that we went to, and it was in St. Louis as well. The next retreat I went to, I think I must have made 300 copies of it. 300 copies of it. And I passed it around. Everybody that wanted one could have one. And it and later on, as I, grew to know and love Swami and go to India and things like that, um, somebody would introduce me to another person and they would say, "Oh, she's from Chicago." And then they say, "Oh, you're from Chicago. There was this picture," and they would be from Fiji. They would be from Fiji somewhere, England, anywhere. And they would say, "Oh, there was this picture that this woman took and it had this light." And I would just smile from ear to ear. I would just smile. So that is my very first experience. I've had many since then.
Wow. That's
Bernie,
great.
what about you?
Well, I'm seeing a lot of connections here. So, first of all, I will say that my time in the seminary, I was a philosophy major, and what really interested me the most in philosophy was metaphysics.
Mhm.
I really fell in love with that. It was just understanding the nature of the universe. And by universe, we meant, of course, the physical universe and the spiritual universe as one. And but in the Catholic telling of it, there were a lot of unanswered questions. And at a certain point, I guess in my late 30s, I kind of stopped practicing Catholicism. I had already gotten divorced at that point, and so I kind of was moving away. And then just after that, about 40, I ended up moving to Connecticut, and then married my wife now, Barbara. I think 30 years ago now. So I guess it was 45. Something. I know. Excuse me. I'm not going to do the numbers. At any rate, but I got there and met her, and it was through Barbara that I was introduced to Swami, and we had met in another spiritual organization called the I Am Activity of Saint Germain, very
Mm.
small group of people, but it helped us to both be. Well, she was already vegetarian, and so it introduced me to vegetarianism and a higher level of purity than as a Catholic I was used to. Um, but then she had run into Swami like back in the 70s, saw a video about him, and then 10 or 12 years later saw a book about Swami. And so her introduction to Swami was very gradual. And then finally, she just decided to see if he was still alive. So she wrote a letter off to the bookstore in Tustin, where the book had come from. And in 4 days, her letter got to them, and their response got to her, saying that yes, there was a center, actually two centers at the time in the Hartford area, one in Windsor and the other in Manchester. And so we started to try and connect with them. But at the time, my work meant that I had to work in the evenings because I worked as a salesman in homes. So I had to be there when people were home and ready to talk. And that's when all the meetings were. And they said, "Oh, but there is this one center that meets Sunday mornings out in Farmington, but they're all Indian people. I don't know if you'd really like that." Well, I had fallen in love with Indian music back when I was in college and was always taken by Indian culture. It resonated with me. So when we went there, it was a whole house full of Indian people, mostly all Gujarat and all, uh, family or close family. And we were adopted by them. And that was the most wonderful thing because for the whole first year, we had them all to ourselves. And that's kind of how we felt about it. So that was the beginning of it. And it was only a couple of years after that that we went to, actually less than 2 years, that we went to Puttaparthi for the first time. And that was the first of this one. Actually, this photo is a few years later, and this was our one interview with Swami, or my one interview with Swami. And it's a delight because, first of all, I brought my camera to Puttaparthi and then gave it to Ravi Dabir because he could get up on the veranda. And he had my camera in his hand when we were invited into the room. He handed the camera to my wife, Barbara, who started taking flash pictures. And every time she did, Swami would look up. And then Swami left the room to go get something for one of the two children that was in the room. And when she did, Jatin, who is over Swami's right shoulder now, said, "Bernie, take the camera." So I got up and traded places with her and proceeded to take about 40 some pictures during this 90-minute interview that we had with Swami. And this was the final picture that one of the other people took because I wasn't in any of the other pictures. So this is just the beginning of a lot of memories that I have. That one retreat, excuse me.
Beautiful pic, Bernie.
Thank you. That one interview is the source of, I could go on for hours about what I've learned from it. And there are things that I've learned from that interview, discovered, that I've just discovered in the last year or two. I mean, it's just been a constant unfolding. So delightful. But anyway, we don't want to dwell on this too long or we'll run over. But so let's talk about, though, our gratitude for Swami and for what, and I guess in a sense that and how our sense of gratitude has changed because of our relationship with Swami. So, Crystal, why don't you start this time?
Okay. My gratitude, I've always been grateful for uh, everything, most things in my life. I've always been a pretty grateful person. But the thing I would think that would has changed from knowing who and what Swami is, because I wasn't sure in the beginning. I'm going to India. What? You know, and I wasn't sure what I was doing in the beginning, but I knew I had to go. And so my thing about gratitude has changed in the way like in simple things. Like I used to be kind of a reserved type person. I was always in the back. I was always, not wanting to be seen or heard or anything like that. And somehow my first trip to India changed all of that. I would dress myself down. I would, my mother was always, whenever the choir took pictures, my mother was always saying, "Crystal, why are you always hiding behind somebody's wig?" So, all you could never see my face because I always positioned myself behind something so you couldn't see me. And so she said, "Why are you always hiding behind somebody's big wig?" So, but the first trip I took to India, I came back and it might sound simple, but I changed my whole wardrobe. It was like I came out. I came out of a shell. Every my wardrobe changed. I mean, if I could buy a pair, I would have two pair of shoes, black and brown. When I came back, I must have had 20 pairs of shoes. And it sounds silly, but it seems like Sai Baba pulled me out of from behind the scenes and made me realize that I have a lot to be grateful for. I have a lot to, just to be thankful for everything every day. And I still do that every day. My motto is every day in every way, I am grateful. Every day in every way, I am grateful. Even when it hurts, even when it's scary, whatever, I have to say it every day in every way. I am grateful for everything,
That's great.
for
That's great.
everything. And you have those times when you're a little scared, a little worried. It's not going the way you think it should go. And I have to say my motto every day. In every way, I am grateful. I'm happy.
All right.
When Swami used to pass me in darshan and he would say, be happy, I would say to myself, well, what the heck am I trying to be so happy about? This is a problem. That's wrong. This didn't go right. But I got it. After a couple of hearing it a few times, I got what he meant.
All
Be
right.
happy. Be grateful. God is good.
That's beautiful.
Jeremy, how about you?
Oh,
What is your sense?
well, I I noticed I've noticed over the last number of years um, this feeling that I recognize as gratitude
Mhm.
as one of the kind of highest feelings. Um, Sometimes maybe I'll just have out of nowhere this moment of like somehow I'll come to tears.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And it's not there aren't tears of sadness. Um, uh, Tears of joy, but like one time I had this experience, Bernie. I was thinking about this recently. One time when I went to college in India for a year, and my friends and I, who lived in Hyderabad, we rode motorcycles from Hyderabad to Puttaparthi, and it was I think we did it over about 3 days or something, and we were a gang of about maybe 50 motorcycles.
Wow.
And one day we were riding, and some of us were riding two per motorcycle. Like I didn't have my own motorcycle, so I was riding on the back of somebody's motorcycle. And then at some point, like we took turns and we swapped, and I took duties to drive, and my friend was on the back. And we were actually kind of the tail motorcycle in the group. We were the safety bike. We had a giant like duffel bag full of like tools to help anybody whose motorcycle broke down on this long
Mm.
multi-day journey. Well, so we were the last motorcycle, and then like I was driving, and we got a flat tire while we were driving, and like I only recognized it, suddenly, like the back end was starting to swing, it was starting to slide under the weight, and almost instantly we went down and crashed, and we skidded across the highway going, like probably 60 miles an hour. And my friend was wearing a helmet. The helmet was shattered, like trash, but it saved his head. I wasn't wearing any helmet, but my ankle was twisted. And, it happens, the crash happened so suddenly. We just got ourselves out of the highway so as to not get run over by a vehicle. And I remember my first reaction was tears. Like I was filled with this feeling. I remember this like wave. I think the word is gratitude. Like though I had experienced something like so scary, I was like filled with this wave of gratitude, as if I felt like protected. I felt like some grace had fallen on me that I had no control over. It was due to nothing, you know. And so we've continued our journey, and eventually we get to Puttaparthi. And I got put in the hospital there and spent the night. They did x-rays and everything. And so I go to Darshan the next morning with my group of friends, and Swami came straight up to me and he said, "How are you?" And I said, "Swami, by your grace, I'm fine." And he made vibhuti for me. And this vibhuti tasted like aspirin. It really, honestly, tasted like aspirin. And I guess I refer back to that experience because gratitude is this feeling. It's like some grace falls on us that we've done nothing to, we probably don't even deserve. See, it's one thing if we, on our own efforts, we go out into the world and secure some achievement, right? We work hard and we achieve something. That joy is not the same thing as I was vulnerable in a highway and was, you know what I mean? Some grace falls on you like in that way.
Yeah.
Gratitude is like that. It's something that is this grace that falls on us, not by our own efforts.
Mm-hmm.
Very true. Very true. All right, Doris, you get to follow that.
I was just think those were beautiful, and I was just thinking of what has been my greatest moment or moments of gratitude, and I go back in the 90s. We had a mini conference in Prashanti on SSSIO Education and Human Values. And then Swami had us all come into the Mandir for an interview at the end of the conference. And the only things that I remember out of that interview, because there were quite a number of us in there, Swami said, and he was referring to his education program or programs, and Swami said, talk, 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 too much talk, more work. Complain, complain, complain. And he was gesturing with this. Complain, complain, complain. Don't complain, just work. But then he said, and you will see the results of your work. And, we don't look for the results, or we try not to look for results because there is. And in 2018, at the beginning of the year, we started to put together, and I was the lead person with that, as a member of the International Education Committee, and having worked with SSSIO Education and Human Values over quite a number of years. So put together a questionnaire that circulated throughout the world, and it was to gather data on the SSEHV programs that were taking place across the globe. By the birthday of that same year, 2018, a global compendium had been put together. And in fact, I have it here, and was offered to Swami.
Doris.
And that feeling of his trust in us to be able to pull together what he had said, that we would see the results of our work and be able to take and present that at his Mahasamadhi, to his beloved lotus feet. I don't think in my lifetime I've ever felt such a sense of gratitude for being able to be a part of that movement and a part of his trusting me enough to be a messenger of his education programs for the global community. And the as I mentioned, I could never describe the gratitude I felt to Swami for allowing this to take place.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
That's beautiful, Doris.
It's
Wow.
beautiful.
Well, I found, and I guess my story is a little bit different, in that in the 11 trips that we went to Puttaparthi and visited Swami, uh, each one of them seemed to have had a special lesson.
Mhm.
But it really wasn't until in the last 10 years now, I've been a regional officer, first as service, then as vice president, and currently as president. And I have found that that experience has been even more developing in my spiritual journey.
Mhm.
And
How so,
for
Bernie?
how so?
Yeah.
It's hard to say. I guess it's just really immersed me in the Psi organization and having an appreciation for the satsang that we all share. That's really, Swami at one point said that the organization is not for him. He doesn't need it. It's
Mhm.
a gift from him to us.
Yes.
And I've really begun to appreciate what that means.
Yes.
Serving, I mean, I'd been center president and vice president and things like that in the past, but serving on the regional level is a level of involvement that I guess takes up more time, more attention, and feels like more responsibility. And for that, I've really become aware. And I found that just in the last few years, whenever something happens, I say, "Oh, thank you, Swami. Thank you." And it's just, and it's almost like a mantra. It's almost like Sai Ram. You say it, without really thinking of what it means. And then once in a while, you think of what it means. But in this case, it's been the same thing for me. So I'm going to have to accept that's what Swami uh, has given me. My whole time with Swami has been a very gradual transformation.
Mhm.
And that I think is the most important part of it. Um, but now I would like to ask if we have a few minutes, Crystal, if you could sing for us a little bit of Amazing Grace. I think that is something that
Uh, uh,
we would all be grateful for.
Thank you. Thank you. I just decided that I would sing one verse, just one verse, but it's the most important line in the song to me. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a precious soul like me. I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Was blind, oh, but now I see.
Thank you. so much for that, Crystal.
Beautiful.
Thank you,
You.
all
Thank
of
you,
you.
Crystal.
Thank you.
And Sairam Swami, thank you for this opportunity.
Lots of love to you guys.
Lots of
And,
love to you all too.
and lots of love back at you.
Indeed.
And happy Thanksgiving.
And happy
Hi, Rama.
Thanksgiving.
Sairam.
Sairam.
Sairam, Sairam.
Thank you for the 4 panelists who have taken us through their journey of Thanksgiving traditions and their journey to Sai, and also highlighting how to be grateful. It is indeed His grace that brought us all together on this inspiring episode of InSaider Lens. Each of us are drawn to that orange light that is like a magnet. And we all have the deep yearning within that connects to that light in human form. It's a beautiful journey that the 4 panelists shared, and my key takeaways. Every day, in every way, I'm grateful. Sister Crystal, thank you so much. It's really a beautiful mantra to remember. God can make aspirin vibhuti to cure us, to protect us. And yes, it's His grace that falls through. Brother Jeremy, thank you. Thank you for reminding. If we stop complaining and just work, we will see the results of the work. What a beautiful reminder it is. And yes, we have to trust that it is His work that He has given us. Sairam. Sister Doris, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us today. If we practice gratitude every day and all of the activities and serving the Lord in the organization and outside, we will become aware of the divinity all around us. Brother Bernie, thank you. Thank you for sharing. I also want to thank the awesome YA team who has been behind the scene working tirelessly in creating these episodes, and without them we could have not been having these uplifting and inspiring episodes with us. So kudos to the team. Thank you. Since we are on the topic of gratitude, I want to share my own personal reflection. We all have so many things to be grateful for. The bountiful nature, amazing people, animals, and above all, Swami's love and grace protecting us, nourishing us every single day. I'm personally thankful for my parents who have sown a seed of spiritual hunger at a very early in my life. Thankful for my family, my husband, my children, my siblings, extended family and friends who have been there all through, supporting me and guiding me and helping me in every step of the way. Thank you so much to you all. I'm also grateful for the experiences that this community provides. The community outside, Sai community, and especially YA community, which gives me energy, enthusiasm every day to be a better person. And I am a better person because of all of your love and connections. So thank you from the bottom of my heart to all of you, the Sai and all of you. Thank you. Now, here's a challenge for you all viewers. I want you to think about 3 people, whether it's family, friends, or somebody in the community, or inside or outside Sai community. Think of them, express your gratitude, let them know how you are a better person because of their association and their connection. We hope you all enjoyed this episode of InSaider Lens on gratitude on this beautiful Thanksgiving holiday. We will see you next week when our YAs are back in action to take us into a surprise city. So stay tuned on Friday evenings, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Pacific for another episode of InSaider Lens. Until next week, Stay safe, stay healthy, stay well. Sai Ram.